Welcome to the Smart Money Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Arese. I'm the founder of smartmoneyafrica.org, a financial education platform tailored to the African Millennial woman. But I'm probably best known as the author of two best-selling personal finance books, The Smart Money Woman and The Smart Money Tribe. I love having money conversations that encourage African women to think bigger and become the chief financial officers of their own personal economies. This podcast is a weekly show that will focus on powerful conversations, stories, and practical lessons that teach African millennial women how to make money, keep money, and grow money. Hi, buddies. Hope you had a great week. So last week, I realized something that I wanted to share. So in the last few months, I feel like I've been dealing with a lot of obstacles, trying to solve problems in my business. And I've gotten bogged down with all the mini failures, all the mini problems. And even if I felt like I was overcoming those obstacles, in a way, they were kind of overcoming me because I realized that I no longer was excited about my goals. I was just bogged down with the day-to-day tasks. And I realized something. Actually, my best friend told me this. She was like, Arese, you're being ungrateful right now. But it hit me that I wasn't excited about my goals anymore. I wasn't thinking big. I had allowed the problems to kind of make me start second-guessing myself or make me start taking decisions from a fearful place, which obviously isn't good. So I've decided to bring a renewed attitude to my work life in the coming weeks. Go big or go home. Be excited about everything that you're working on. Fall in love with the process. Find joy in the process. Anyway, I just thought I should share that. That is going to be my approach for the next few weeks. And I hope it's your approach too. And in the spirit of thinking bigger, my next guest is Zeze Oriaikhi. Oh my God, I love her so much. She is a big thinker. Zeze Oriaikhi is an entrepreneur. She's an influential speaker and the founder of Malé. Malé is Africa's first global luxury fragrance and body care range. Zeze and I met when we were 10 years old, Igbenedion Education Center. I see massive, yay! And she left after GSS3. She moved to England and we kind of reconnected again when we were in university and kind of built our relationship from there. Zeze is one of those people that were entrepreneurs before it was cool to be an entrepreneur. She has started all kinds of businesses, doing nails, doing all kinds of different things when we were in university. So it all kind of makes sense now. Now, when you talk about Malé, right? Malé is a brand that she started in South Africa. So she's a Nigerian girl who lived in England and then moved to South Africa after university and started this brand called Malé. It was in a huge luxury store in Hyde Park Mall. It's been at Harvey Nichols in London. So she's done really well for herself. So put this in perspective. This is a Nigerian girl who didn't build this brand originally in Nigeria. She took it to South Africa, built it there, and has now taken it to the UK. It's a truly global brand. It reminds me of Jo Malone. And I love the fact that it's such a high quality, high value product and it is made by a Nigerian. So in this conversation, we talk about everything from building her business to our shared experiences as single mothers, obstacles that we face in business, obstacles that she's had to overcome, the importance of staying in your lane when it comes to business and not being bogged down with what other people are doing in their own businesses. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. She's a truly brilliant, phenomenal mind. Enjoy. Hi, Zeze.
Hey.
I'm so excited that you're on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So you guys, Zeze and I have known each other since we were really little in secondary school. I think we were 10 years old.
Yeah.
And we were both in Igbenedion Education Center. Shout out IEC. But then Zeze left after, I think, GS2 or GS3. I can't remember.
GS3, yeah.
GS3. And then we met again and started hanging out when we're in England. So during uni days, and she's done so many amazing things. She built this brand called Malay. And I remember going to South Africa. This is one of my favorite stories.
Oh my God.
Going to South Africa one time for work, and I had to go to this mall called Hyde Park Mall. It's like this really fancy, think Harvey Nichols type mall. I call it a rich people's mall because I had to go there to pick up something for a client for a HNI. And I'm walking past and I see this Malay store, and I know from Facebook that my friend Zeze owns a brand called Malay. And I was in shock. Like, it looked like a Joe Malone store. And I walk in and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm in my 20s, and I think I don't know anyone who has has built such a huge business already to have a store that looks like, Joe Malone in our 20s. So it was like a big, proud moment for me. And it was just so inspiring, like to see this Nigerian girl have built this brand in South Africa. So it was like a double inspiring moment. A Pan-African brand that had become so big. So yay.
Thank you.
So maybe start by introducing yourself, what you do, and telling us, how you started Malay.
I guess the easiest description, I'm Zeze Oriaikhi Sao. I wear several hats now. I'm an entrepreneur. I founded Malay Natural Science, which is Africa's first global luxury fragrance and body care brand. I'm also considered a beauty and cosmetics industry expert. I contribute to, beauty industry and insider news. I write a column for a trade magazine focused on the African beauty and cosmetics market, contribute to a number of conferences. I sit on the advisory board of the Cosmetics Global Summit. I also run a small brand consultancy with the hopes that I'm able to usher in more African businesses in the luxury space into the global marketplace. I also teach a guest lecturing spot at INSEC Business School on entrepreneurship, startup marketing and research strategies, as well as luxury brand innovation. And finally, I started running the podcast Third Culture Africans at the start of the year, which is sharing stories of Africans across the globe who are creating businesses that are ultimately shifting the needle on our culture as Africans on a global landscape. So I think that would be a brief introduction about me. I think I've earned my stripes over the years, being featured in
Yes, you have.
everything from CNN down to the Daily Mail, Oprah Magazine. And I recently just took up some digital real estate with my own website, zezeonline.com. So zezeonline.com, where I try and share everything from, my lifestyle to motherhood journey, podcast episodes, down to sort of beauty industry insights. So it's a resource that I think, actually, to be fair, you encouraged me to do it. Because you felt like, I remember we had like an hour-long conversation where you were sharing enough about what I know. And so I kind of pulled my socks up and decided to create the site. So yeah, that's a resource out there.
Because I have this thing with my friends where I get really annoyed when people are doing such amazing things and they're not talking about it. And because they're so shy, or is the word shy? Because they're so reserved, right? They don't realize the power or the impact that their stories have. And I think Zeze is one of those people.
like I would say in personal circles, shy is not necessarily what I am. But I think from a business perspective, for the longest of times, you rightfully pointed, I started, Malay in my 20s. I was 23 when I started the business. None of my peers were considering entrepreneurship. Everyone was working jobs. And I think when I started, I had levels of insecurities over, because in 2009, to be fair, entrepreneurship isn't what it is today. It was uncool. It was considered the thing people did who weren't serious. And so I always felt like I had to prove myself and my successes. When you run a business, like, in hindsight, yes, you get the opportunity to sit back and count your blessings, as it were. But while you're going through it, though, it doesn't feel that way, because it's almost Jekyll and Hyde. 1 minute, here's a glorious experience. For instance, the CNN interview. I moved into my office at the time in, 24 hours for that interview.
Wow.
Because, here was a pressure point for me to turn up as a, serious business person with an office. But prior to that, I'd been comfortably working off of my dining table. And for that interview, I only curled literally the front and sides of my hair. The back of my hair, if someone saw the back, it was like matted and straight in the back.
So tell me about raising, capital for Malay, right? So lots of young girls, they have ideas, they want to, put them out in the world, they want to execute, but they complain about, lack of access to capital, especially in this part of the world. But you had this idea to start a beauty business, and you were doing it in a foreign country because obviously it was not the UK and it was not England.
Yeah.
So you were new in South Africa. How did you raise the financing to build Malay?
So, I'm of the firm belief that, friends and family money is good money. And so I used, my savings. And then I raised the rest of the money with friends and family. And, I have no regrets about that, because I think, if I had taken out a loan, or if I had done it slightly differently. Yeah, I don't think I would. And look, to be fair, you still have pressure from your friends and family, right? But the good thing is that no one is going to stop talking to you. And I think by and large, when friends and family invest in, early stage businesses, which, everyone would call seed capital today, there's a huge amount of that's just based on goodwill and them knowing you as a person and them taking a punt on you and your future, which I think, by and large, investors or institutions don't have that context. And so, I wasn't really versed in, and I was lucky to have friends and family that could invest in the beginning. And I always say when 100%. And when I'm asked the question, and I think as women, we sometimes feel a certain level of guilt for having that as an option, and to be honest, money or having a stable financial situation in any business, that's one of the factors that make businesses. And so whether it comes from your father, your husband, your parents, your siblings, that's an advantage that, you should be proud of, because that safety net really makes the difference to how you can build a business in the early days.
That's amazing. So what would you say your biggest challenges were starting a beauty business in the height of recession in Africa? Because I always tell people that I think that doing business in Africa is a different kettle of fish. It comes with its own unique obstacles and circumstances. So what would you say your biggest challenges were with building this business?
I'm still facing challenges even today while still trying to build it. I don't think the challenges ever stop. I think some of the early challenges in the beginning was getting into a market that, I didn't necessarily have the finances to compete in the same way historically other bigger brands or other brands existing were competing in. So I had to find unique ways of being heard and being seen. And so I, sold my story because, I didn't have to pay for the advertisement in magazines, etc. And a friend of mine kindly pointed out to me how unique, I was at the time, a 20-something-year-old Black girl who wasn't South African, but who was building a global brand. And so I couldn't afford to advertise my products in magazines, but magazines were happy to profile me and my entrepreneurial journey and my story. So I think in the beginning, it was finding ways that I could promote myself and promote my business that gave me the awareness and the reach that I needed without having the budget. And then I think that's almost like a constant challenge because, the business is still self-funded. I still haven't raised, external capital. And so that's a constant within the journey. But what it does do is, I'm a bit of a geek in the sense that I love learning, and it's also forces me to build skills that are worth owning along the way that otherwise would require a budget for. So, I shoot a lot
because
of...
you pivoted quite a lot. And, to put it in context, right? Again, Nigerian girl who grows up in Nigeria to a point, moves to the UK, does your education there, moves to South Africa and starts this business. So I think a lot of people need to understand, that mindset, and then even the pivots that you've had to do in the course of building this business, because you were stocked in Harvey Nichols.
Yeah, so we've done Harvey Nichols, we've done travel retail with South African Airways, so being available in the duty-free cart and the magazines on the planes, working with Amazon and people like that. So I think there's always been a pioneering aspect of what I've done with Malay.
When you see a brand on those kinds of platforms, right? And when you see or experience the Malay brand, you would think that they're like billionaire investors involved, right? Because you've bootstrapped, but you found a way to align with global platforms that have made the brand, huge.
Yeah, I think what I'm good at and what I learned to be good at is building the business around my strengths. There are things that I know I'm not great at. I have an eye for design. I have an eye for, being able to extrapolate and see the potential and opportunities in things. And so I've built the business around that now at different points in time and place, and having a great product, and ensuring that the quality and the consistency of that gives the merit required to be in those places. For me, that's just my base standard of, execution. And I think, yes, having the product is great, but ensuring that I have a world-class product that is competitive for what the real marketplace is and not what I'm hoping to kind of get away with has always been my focus. Because there was also a political statement around my journey with Malay, which was very much, people also need to see that we can export luxury out of the continent. And I think it was because I had so many people tell me no in the beginning, it almost kind of fueled me, because I just used to think, but why is this assumption that, it's not possible? Why is it that, and I remember having meetings and people going, but, clearly you're not going to be able to do this. I'm not a middle-aged white man with lots of money. And
Yeah.
I think I was so determined to prove that narrative wrong and to actually have an end product that meant, and for a long time, actually, people didn't believe that Malay was Black, female, African.
Yeah. So maybe something we need to actually discuss, right, is, during the course of, building this business, right, how have you been able to negotiate like contracts and like find ways to increase your compensation? Because I can imagine the conversations with people like Harvey Nichols and Amazon, those would be difficult conversations. Those would be hard conversations.
And
take a while, take a lot of resilience.
Yeah, but it took me a year of constantly emailing, and the more structured retail systems are different from the African structure. It took me a year with Harvey Nichols. It took me about 18 months to get my store in Hyde Park. So I was the first Black-owned African brand to ever have a store in Hyde Park Mall.
Wow.
Now, again, as a non-South African, that says something. But I think I set my mind. Yeah, I had set my mind. It was almost like, well, you're not allowed here. And in my mind, I was like, but why can't I be there? So I must be there just because you've told me I can't. And I remember the first meeting I had with the owners of the mall, or the management of the mall. And it was very much, well, you can't be here type of thing. And I walked away from that meeting going, you wait and see, you will watch me open this store and you come and drink my champagne and, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. And it was a fight.
They outright just say, we don't want Black people, or they make the criteria so high or so hard to reach that it kind of disqualifies a few people.
I think because there's so much lack of information and lack of sharing, and also I think there's also people create a barrier in their minds, right? Because you haven't seen someone else do it, so somehow you can't do it. But I think in my mind, I could have gone to Santon, which is much bigger, so much more international. But I felt like Santon was so huge, would require so much work. Hyde Park was so much more manageable and was very much about tapping into the local market. And I felt strongly about wanting to be accepted by the local market.
As a luxury brand.
Yeah, as a luxury brand. And, we have the accreditation now as a proudly South African brand, which I am totally, proud of, because, to create a product end to end, within the continent is a huge feat. And to have that then translate on a global scale, I hope serves as inspiration for anyone out there who is considering that their view on whatever they're creating can't get bigger. I can tell you that I've seen, Malay's been featured in Elle India. I've never even been to India before. You know what I mean? Like there are things that, as a result of the business, I have been able to do the most incredible things. I sit on the advisory board for the Cosmetics Global Summit. I have spoken in so many different places. And, this wasn't something that, if you said to me at the beginning of the journey, this is what it would look like for you 10, 11 years later, I would have said, get out of here. And I made bold steps in between. I invested in a manufacturing facility at some point. That went really bad. And so I've had to, you also learn along the way. As beautiful as the store was, working 7 days a week almost killed me.
It's tough.
I couldn't, and I also realized that actually I don't enjoy my business as a retail business. It just doesn't excite me.
So what was your first childhood memory about money?
Okay, my first money memory was always questioning. I think I had the nickname Even Though, and I would always question, when I would say, oh, I want this, and they'll be like, but you don't have any money. And I'll be like, even though I don't have the money, I can X or Y. And I think I always never really respected the fact that money played a huge role in life in that way. Yeah, or just I guess I would always find an alternative idea to not having money.
I love
and
that.
so I think in my business, what that has done has meant that I have built skills worth owning that are valuable. It has also meant that I've had to be specific and meaningful. And also just my approach to money has always been, I would say to some extent, I haven't necessarily been obsessed by it. Like I knew going in, I didn't have the money it took, start Malay in the way that, most beauty brands start. I had just enough money to actually make the products and pay a design agency to create the logo and the design. But what I knew was the little money I had, I was going to make sure that the product was great. And then beyond that, to where my money wasn't complete, I would find other ways of doing it that perhaps weren't traditional. So in my case, I chose to build my business off of a B2B relationship. So selling to hotels, which meant I didn't have to have any press or PR or pay for marketing. It was based on relationship and, service delivery and price. So I think I've always, for when I haven't had money, I've always found creative ways of making sure that doesn't matter. Yeah, that doesn't matter so much. Yes, it matters, but it doesn't define or limit my goals or my dreams in the way
I think that's such an important message. And I've never even really articulated it like that or tied it to,
the champion of doing it.
But it's amazing. Like, because I feel the same way where I have a vision for something. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know if I have enough resources to get there, but what matters is I can see the vision clearly. And I will figure it out along the way. Like my mindset is I'll figure it out along the way, right? It doesn't matter that I don't have all the, the millions to do it the way that I want to do it, but I'll figure it out. And maybe that's even a really important lesson to pass on to our kids, where we teach them that, think big, take big risks. Don't necessarily worry about, oh, I don't have enough to do this, or, I don't think I have, the resources to complete this, but just go for it and figure it out. Problem solve as you go.
Yeah, I think coming from a monetized society where people's, self-worth is largely aligned to their net worth. I think for me, that's something I've had to unlearn.
Do you know what's so interesting? I think that in Nigeria, people's self-worth is not necessarily tied to their net worth. It's tied to their things.
Well, I guess interchangeably, right? Like your things reflect what you can afford or what you seemingly have the disposable income to afford. But also living in South Africa, I found that to be very clear in terms of, having things signify, your standing. It's like all of a sudden then you become an oga or you become auntie because you're seemingly demonstrating, wealth. I think I got advice from a successful entrepreneur a very long time ago, which was actually the best place to be is to always be underestimated. Because there's value in you showing up and always exceeding people's expectations. So actually, there's nothing wrong with walking into a room and being underestimated, because I think I had a huge issue with that, which was, I'm not walking in, trying to look the part, right? I'm walking in as myself. I'm pretty simple. I like nice things, but, those things don't really define me. And, chances are, I'm not the fashionista of the month, right? So,
So I think that in as much as it's important for us to focus on our purpose and our value, it's extremely important for us to get in the habit of saying, yes, I am working to create value that I'm going to get paid for. And that has to be done in a measured way. Profit goals need to be set. Costs need to be weighed in context of what kind of revenue do I get from this activity. So I think we need to be careful about, the narrative of I'm not doing it for I'm not doing it for money.
Yeah. So I think all the time. I think to be clear, for me, it's not I'm not doing it for money. I think, I opened with saying, money is oxygen, right? Whether you have that safety net with the profits in your business, with having a solid financial background with your family or whatever, those are the things that allow you to take the risks. In my experience, I have found that if at the fore, I am focusing 100% of my attention just on the financial elements, it just doesn't work out. I make bad decisions. I make short-term decisions. I make decisions that are not necessarily in line with my vision of long-term sustainability and the creation towards my goal. Now, if I am able to put that further behind and I can focus more on building the foundations of what it is that I need, now that doesn't diminish the fact that, being able to run a successful business a decade later is a skill, requires work, requires learning, requires failing and starting again, requires making bad decisions, requires learning that being desperate or that quick buck that you thought was a quick buck ends up actually not being that. And so all of those learning experiences, I hope, are, things that people will take from this episode and consider. But notwithstanding, my comment wasn't to sound flippant. Look, I wake up every day and bills are real. At the end of the month, you get an invoice. But in my experience, I have found that having that at 100% being the focus does not make me make good decisions in the long term. But if I'm able to ease the pressure off of, the financial part of things, I am able to end up in a position where I'm able to keep to my vision and continue to work in a way that allows me to build the skills that my business needs for me to continue to do what I'm doing and, to still be here in 10 years time or build a legacy that I'm proud of. But if every decision is a short-term financial decision, then you almost erase the part of vision away from the entrepreneurship journey. That's just been my narrative.
No, definitely. I think I relate to what you're saying in terms of like taking short-term, financial decisions that are not necessarily in line with your overall vision. And I find that when we do things like that, it's because we're coming from a place of fear. Like maybe something has happened and it's like, oh, let me quickly change my sales strategy. And then you're focused on, the money, and you're not really, growing the business or thinking about the bigger picture. So what would you say that your biggest, money mistake has been? What's been your biggest failure when it comes to money?
Listening to other people. That's been mine. When everyone starts to give you, why don't you even do this one? And, I know in my heart, that's not really something that matters to me or that I want to do, but it's seemingly the benchmark, right? So wanting to turn up to people's benchmarks and expectations of where you should actually be, especially in business, right? So it's like, don't you have an office? How many people do you employ? I think those questions in the early days, especially when you're new into entrepreneurship, create insecurities. And then you find yourself chasing those numbers, right? So when people say, how many people do you employ? there's this expectation, if you don't employ more than 5 people, how's your business big, or how's what you're doing serious? And so my biggest mistakes have been wanting to turn up to those comments with an answer and trying to build my business towards those answers. And I think from a personal perspective, I'm pretty frugal when it comes to my personal expenses. I think my biggest luxuries are making my home comfortable.
Lovely. I think it's interesting that you say that, because there's a lot of comparison even in business. Sometimes when we think about, stay in your lane, don't compare yourself to other people, we're talking about it on a personal level, like in a personal context, right? But I think that we don't talk enough about, all the things that we do in business because other people have said do this, or everybody. So people feel like, I have to have an office, like a really nice office, because I'm an entrepreneur now and I'm in a trendy industry. And I don't know, it's weird for me. I've always found it interesting, because and this is back to the money thing, right? Where I always ask myself, is this decision cosmetic, or does it affect the bottom line directly, right? So do I need a fancy office for the kind of work that I'm doing right now? Do you get what I mean? As opposed to, everybody has an office, so it's not a real business. As in, if I don't have a building with 50 people in it.
And I think that's the insecurity in the beginning, right? I can tell you for free, the first business plan I wrote on Malay actually didn't have a retail store included. Like, I was never going to own my own retail store. But then I would have enough conversations and enough comments that made me feel like, but the only way people would see me or take me seriously, and don't get me wrong, like I eventually, rehashed my business model to create that. And the store did create value. But nonetheless, I took on, that was a huge cost. Running a retail store, between the rental, the staffing, keeping up with, the marketing activities, etc. And so that experience for me was also a learning experience around, actually, I don't need to turn up to people's comments, because those comments create an insecurity, right? So it's like, you don't have an office.
You start to doubt your vision. You start to doubt the decisions or the steps that you planned to take to get to a certain point, and you start listening to the other voices that people have planted in your head.
Yeah, and I think 10 years in now, I can comfortably say those things don't really matter to me. I became a mom 2 years ago, and I made the decision that actually I wanted to be around more, so I will work from home more. And so I had an office, but the office didn't serve me anymore. My life had changed in such a way that actually my work doesn't require me to sit at an office. There's no value in doing it anymore. And so just also having the comfort to change your structure, right, to suit you. Because I think the positives of entrepreneurship is that you are trying to create an optimum self and business, right, at all times. And so what do you need to do to create that for you? And life does show up, right? Like, if you are a visionary led business and your business relies largely with you turning up, for most small to medium sized businesses, that is the requirement. And so that means that in some ways your personal life and your professional life have to complement each other in some way. And so I found that actually not trying to make the sacrifices or create a version because of those comments serves me better.
So what is your investment strategy, especially now that you're a mother and you have new priorities? Do you feel like your investment strategy has changed? The way that you make investment decisions have been altered by the fact that you've become a mother?
100%. So, I've done things like I've created a will. You know, before becoming a parent, I didn't have a will. But I now have a will, also thinking about her future and ways of investing in her future early on. So she has, they call them ISAs in the UK, but she has an ISA. And so I think becoming a parent, you also start to recognize and also seeing your peers, right, who have had opportunities slightly different from you, where you hope to close the gap for your children and how you intend on doing that. So, you know, I worked throughout university and I had part-time jobs. As a result of having those part-time jobs, I was able to buy my first car, pay for my car insurance, you know, go on nights out with my friends.
Yeah.
Now, do I want my daughter to have that experience? Probably not, you know, because I also know how at times stressful that felt and how polarizing that felt. And, you know, there was a part of me that loved the independence, right? A friend of mine, you know, we used to talk about it. I could afford to go get my nails done. I could go to the hairdressers. Like, we had a routine. And we were living in air quotes an adult life, right? Because we were able to generate an income. I honestly thought at the time, you know, I was very independent and I was an adult because I didn't need to ask my parents for extra pocket money if I needed to make any decisions. You know, I remember my first paycheck. I worked as a Christmas temp at Faith Shoes in the stockroom. So, you know, then they used to walkie-talkie. And please, can I get item number? They'll call the code.
Why
Because I think a lot of nights out at uni, I would be coming from work and changing and going out or whatever. But essentially, that's what I did. And my first paycheck, I remember I bought myself a 3-disc CD changer, a DVD player, and I felt really proud about owning those things, right? So I think, you know, fast forward to the version of me now as an adult, to answer your question. Instead, I'm researching ISAs and, you know, pension plans and things like that now. And also deliberately thinking of, you know, what can I do to maximize my income? What can I do as a result of maximizing that? Yes, to improve my current lifestyle standards, but also how can that play a part in my future? You know, we're at an age now, we have to start thinking of retirement, because the sooner we are able to turn up for that sort of planning, you know, the chances, the more of a likelihood that you can continue to keep the same standard of living till you pass on, right? And also have something worthwhile that your children can benefit from. Because I think what's very clear, and also just watching my European friends, is that there's no expectation, you know, even in their adulthoods, their parents are still showing up for them. You know, there's this expectation in our cultures, you know, we give back to the parents, but actually, you know, there's something in watching a different culture be in a place where actually the thinking is that the parents do as much as they can so that the children are set up for the future and even better. So there's no, you know, maybe you buy your parents a treat, you know, a nice gift, but there's
It's
no,
not like you're looking after them for the rest of, you're not their retirement plan.
Exactly.
It's actually interesting because I feel like for me, those are two extremes, and the goal is to find, you know, the balance, right? Because I get what you mean. Like, a lot of my European friends, they're still you know, looked after to a certain extent by their parents. Like, so maybe you get married and your parents, you know, give you like a property, or your first child already has a stock portfolio before they're born, that kind of thing. And it's great, right? But I feel like African parents are more like, we've already paid your school fees, go and work. Go and find a way to become a success, like, in life, right? And the goal is for you to come back and look after them, right? Because of
And
all the sacrifices that they've
yeah,
made.
but
And I
also
think it's
but also very few of them give you the tools to even really be able to come back and do that outside of the stories, right? That you're told. So you're also left with the task of having to figure out how you also adult for yourself and come back an adult for the adults in your life.
Well, to be fair, like I feel like my parents were always from the beginning, our money is our money. We're only going to pay your school fees. You have to go and work and become successful. But to be fair to them, like there was never the expectation that we would come and, look after them. Like, but it's a very African thing. It's a very African for majority of Africans. You
Yeah.
have children so that they can be your retirement plan. And then I guess it goes into that whole black tax thing where young adults are now they come out the gate and they already have financial problems because they're carrying a cost burden that their small incomes or their starter salaries cannot support. So they're in debt very early because they have to pay back, their parents, which is not, great. But then on the other end of the spectrum, Zeze, we also have to be honest. There's some people who have been given the tools and, the property and all of that to succeed. And it's nice, right? But I think that to a certain extent, there's also a large proportion of those people who are now not really functional adults, right? So it's like, I've never had to work for anything, so I'm not even going to
Yeah.
bother. Why work when I already have like all these assets? Like, what's the
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
Right?
So
But
I,
to be fair, there are also still people who are from that kind of privilege who are like, I'm going to create a big impact in this world. I'm going to come
yeah.
up with a product or a
Yeah.
solution, to solve a problem and do it big. And I have the privilege of doing this because I'm financially settled. I don't have to worry about money. So I
Yeah.
can worry about impacting, the world in a
Yeah.
big way.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's about balance.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the
Yeah.
privileges I have is, I don't have to worry about my parents, right? And as
Mm.
they age, they have made financial provisions for themselves. So I'm in a position where I can now focus on myself and my children and providing for them. If I had to include, also the responsibility of providing for aged parent or aging parents, that totally will affect my decision making 120%. It would affect even just the risks that I take in business, right? Perhaps maybe, I would feel the pressure to be in a stable income job that would allow me to meet those expenses. So I think with everything, what is clear is that we're all in this, our parents, us, are all in this to hopefully try and do better than the generation before us. So
Most definitely. Most definitely. How so you've recently become a single mother. So and because I'm a single mother myself, I feel like there are very specific things that we have to deal with when it comes to managing our personal finances. So well actually before we go into that, right? Did you have money conversations with your ex-husband before you got married, or did those conversations start when you got married?
I think we always had very sort of top level conversations. I think it was, clear we're both young, right? People who didn't, he was older than me, but he'd been in a career. But there wasn't too much to talk about, if that makes sense. I had just finished my master's. There weren't huge assets involved and businesses built and all of that. I think a lot of that was done within the marriage. We would have top level discussions around what we were building and how we saw that impacting us and our future. But I guess for myself, I would say I never took the front row seat on a personal perspective, because it was always a collective pot in my mind. And it was only until my marriage broke down and I'm now having to then, one, you're dealing with, the emotions and all of that. But at the same time, you're also being faced with some of the biggest financial decisions that you're having to make that have a long-term impact, not just on you, but also on your children. And so then you're now thrust into the driving seat, right, of not just your own financial future, but also your child's financial future. And so that is a completely different place to, being a co-pilot with someone, and then now being actually the only driver. So I think for me, to answer your question, yes, there were always conversations, but the tone of that conversation changes drastically when you're now having it alone with yourself, right? And then you're having to forward plan with fail safes against your health, because now all of a sudden those instances come to the fore, right? So you're now thinking, if something happens to me, how is my child going to be taken care of, especially if your child is, living primarily with one parent more than the other parent. And so you now start to figure out, okay, how do I build my tribe around me? That means that, your child is also getting exactly all of the things that you need, the proper care, and you also don't want your child to feel disadvantaged as a result of, a marriage not working out in the longer term. And so all of those things now come to the fore and are big, things to tackle on your own, versus when, there were things that you would tackle as a team and you always knew, okay, if I didn't do, this person can do, and then, those are things that start to change. And so then you start to have more in-depth conversations with, accountants, your bank representative. You start to look at bank solutions. You start to think of, okay, perhaps maybe I need to think of how I'm, putting my money in my accounts now differently, because, that makes a difference. Perhaps you stop being so lax with, paying for business expenses on your personal account, because actually, the pressure is on there, because every penny now starts to count because there's no safety net.
Okay, so for me, the biggest difficult thing about, being a single mother is basically your views evolve as you go along, right? So when I first started on this accidental journey, I think it was a pride thing. You think, please, I'm not going to ask for help. I can do this myself. I just want peace. I don't want to, have to ask for things, and I'll do it by myself, right? But after a while, I realized, sis, nobody's giving you prizes. There's no medal for
Yeah, there's no medal for suffering.
Exactly. There's no medal for using all of your disposable income as in to look after your child, to prove that you're an independent woman. They don't give prizes for it. When the child has grown up, they love their mother and their father the same, right? Especially in this era of I'm independent, right? Like sometimes we can get carried away and you realize that you're spending a lot of your disposable income to prove that you're a strong, independent woman, instead of, realizing that two people gave birth to this child.
Yeah.
Two people are financially
But I think some of that comes from wanting to prove also society and everybody else that, you're capable. Because I think, unfortunately, there's a duality or a double standard for women who are coming out of their marriages, or even widows, right? Like there's a double standard. Like you and I had this conversation about this expectation about, you're not supposed to survive it. You're supposed to be living in a shack, dying, right? Like that is the societal expectation. And so you come out of it really wanting to prove everybody wrong, right? Because you also want to show that, you are capable. And notwithstanding, most times I think it's also the voices that have been left in your head from, whether you want to call them well-meaning people or people who don't mean well.
I think for me, just to round up, what I would say to, first of all, women who are married, don't wait for something to happen. Because for some people it's divorce. For some people it's my husband lost his job, as in, and we're in our 40s. Or for some people is he died. Don't wait to be at the forefront of your personal finances.
A challenge.
Don't wait till something happens to be at the forefront of your personal finances. Like, you need to ask questions. Even if you're not the breadwinner, you need to know what's going on with health insurance, with debt, with, how we're earning, what we're investing in, what is the family's financial fortune, because you just never know. And I think it's important for women to also know how to manage their own personal finances, right? Outside of the families, building their own assets outside of the families, because we all came into this world as individuals and we're all going to be like individuals. So we need to know the difference between our individual selves and the collective. Because both are important, but I feel like women also need to start looking out for themselves, so that we don't start sounding like victims when, something happens. If you're not married yet, I think if I had to tell my 20-something-year-old self something, would be, ask questions, right? Like, you need, even if you don't get married by questionnaire, but now as I've gotten older, I find it hilarious that we don't have enough conversations about money before we make lifetime commitments. So even if a person doesn't have anything to rub together, does not matter. Still ask questions. Like, you want to understand people's attitudes. Even something as simple as, how we allocate our limited resources. So for example, if I think that my child's education is a priority, there's some people who will say, "Oh no, that school is so expensive," right? But they spend the exact amount of money on upper class tickets or popping bottles in club, and they don't see that as a waste of money. But expensive education is a waste of money.
And I think there's also single parents in relationships, right? Seemingly. Single parents in relationships. I'd love to share this quote by a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And she says, "The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen."
I love that so much.
I share that because no matter where you are in your journey, whether that you are in debt and you're trying to find your way out, you're in a good relationship, you're in a bad job, in whatever, I think the pressure to turn up in this millennial world a perfect version of yourself does exist. And also just to remember that really doesn't happen without challenges.
Thank you so much, Zeze. I think that this was such a powerful conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I think people are going to really enjoy it. Thank you so, so, so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much.
Zeze's podcast, Third Culture Africans. It is so dope.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll put the handle and the handles and everything when you share and post. So
I will. But where can they reach you?
So Malay is at maleonline.com. So MALEE online.com. On social media, it's at maleonline. At Malay. So MALEE online. You can find me at Zeze online. So zedezedeonline.com. And social media at Zeze online _ and then Third Culture Africans at Third Culture Africans.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smart Money Tribe podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm super excited about creating financial content for African millennial women who want to live a fabulous life, but also want to learn how to find the balance between spending on their lifestyle needs and building assets that could protect their financial futures.